Welcome to the Butt Fixer Podcast, brought to you by Shane Gentry and John Van Olden. Sit back, listen up, and listen good. You're going to hear it all right because we've already done it all wrong. We're going to help you meet your goals and fix your butts. Welcome to the Butt Fixer Podcast. Not so much.
Why don't you do the former then? Do the former.
Yeah. Like, woo, y'all sexy. I can't see you.
Hey, we're recording. We're all complaining about the three of us are wearing glasses. I just started. I scratched my cornea a few weeks ago, and I can't put a contact lens in my eye yet. So, and I'm afraid.
I've never been able to get into man. I think I got glasses like I don't know 8 years ago or something, man. And I mean, my wife, she does contacts and stuff. I just cannot get over trying to put my finger in my eye. I just like you go your whole life doing. Don't get poked in the eye. Don't get poked in the eye. And you want me to poke myself? Fuck.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
It's all fun and games till someone loses an eye.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm not going to lose my eye.
I had 2 weeks. I couldn't see out of the sucker. I was scared shitless, but it healed up, and now I'm afraid to put a contact in. Hey, man, so we're on. This is Mike Wombacher in San Francisco, California.
Welcome,
awesome dog trainer. Wrote how many books you write, Mike? One or two?
Three, and a fourth one ready, and that I'm waiting to retire to publish.
Yeah, I read that book. We'll leave it at that.
You know what I'm talking about.
The expose, man. Yes. You could buy my domain. I own fireyourdogtrainer.com.
How about, I got a better idea. Why don't you buy my manuscript?
Maybe so. Yeah, we'll pass it around 4 or 5 times and maybe get some random person to publish it for $100, and they can take the hit, man. We'll say, God, that guy's a fucking crazy motherfucker. Yeah, so Mike, real quick, I think I mentioned this on one of the other podcasts. I met Mike, man, how long ago, dude? It was
it's at least 25 years.
25 years ago.
Both of us young mid-career dog trainers trying to figure out like what direction to grow this stuff in, and you gave me a lot of good business advice. We all know how to train dogs, but you helped me with some business tips.
We connected because Craigslist was big back then, especially in San Francisco. I mean, I lived right down the street from the Craig of Craigslist. That dude, I sat on the Craig. If you're listening, I'm sorry, man, but I sat across from that dude on the Metro one time, or on the Muni, man, and that dude was a smelly motherfucker. Craig, that's what I think.
You sure that wasn't the whole train?
It could have been, man. Yeah. So there was a dog training forum that I used to, for some reason, this before Facebook even, man, and for some reason that was like interesting to see all the people raging about this and raging about that and arguing about this and arguing about that. And I always heard about Mike, but I never met him. I always heard good things. I always heard, he's solid, like he knows what he's doing. If you pay Mike to do a job, he's going to do the job. Then it's of course on you to do the work that he tells you to do. And there was somebody on there raging about Mike, man. Mike this, Mike that, he sucks. I like blah, blah, blah. And it was so bad that I tracked him down and sent him an email. I said, hey, man, I'm sure you heard about this. I'm sorry you're going through it. You have my support. I've always heard good things about you. This stuff all passes. And he got back in touch with me. We had an email conversation. I said, hey, man, let's meet for a beer. And we met up and we kind of like had this conversation. Like, what do you charge? Just like we did before we hit play. What do you charge? Yeah. What do you charge? How do you do it? How many sessions do you do? Blah, blah, blah.
I know exactly. I remember exactly where we were. We were at Pasta Pomodoro, I think over like on Union Street or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think Mike implemented some of the stuff that I said, you got to do it this way, that way. And quite frankly, I did. The stuff I told Mike, it's all the shit Captain Haggerty told me to do. So I just passed it.
It was real simple bits of advice. That's the best advice often in life generally, are the real simple bits that are so obvious when, in retrospect, and
So how many years have you been at it? No.
31, 32, something 32. Like
that. What year? That's about 1990.
I started early mid 90s, somewhere 92, 93. I met this guy, Kirk Turner.
That's right.
He took me on as an apprentice, and we spent I was very lucky because, I mean, who gets a 9-month hands-on apprenticeship from somebody who really knows their stuff these days for nothing. He just said, "Yeah, come on down, help me out." And he gave me his whole library of stuff to read. He had me come down to his place, as many days as I wanted to help him with his training. And then he trained me up to the level where he could go out and do private training while I was handling the boarding and training at his place. And then he started taking me on privates out with him. I read all this behavior stuff. He'd grill me about it. It's like, oh, okay, let's say if you give me a case thing, it's okay. What if you had a dog that did A, B, C? And then what would you do? And then we talk about it while we were cruising from one private training to another. And it was just great. He was such a good guy. He was so generous. And then, he later became a pioneer in the cancer detection.
Oh, go ahead.
Who's messing with the mic? There's something really loud going on.
I heard that too.
I don't know. Maybe I hit it.
Oh, was it? Here's my mic.
Oh, yeah, my bad. I just want to make sure everybody got to hear what you said, what you were saying.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah, so you're talking about.
So you're on the road talking to each other about training.
Yeah.
Hold on, some software just popped on here. Okay, I just killed it.
Well, I know Kurt was like one of the first, if not the first, to start to train dogs to detect cancer cells.
Yeah.
And,
he wasn't the first, but he was right up there when it first started out as being a thing. That he got involved with a cancer clinic and started training dogs, doing scent detection and all this stuff. And actually, one of his dogs was at some dog show with the owner, with the handler, and went up and started signaling on a judge.
Oh shit!
And and then of course Kirk was kind of pissed. You're not supposed to do that unless you're invited. Well, P.S. He went up to the judge later and said, this is what this dog does. You might want to go see somebody on Monday. And sure enough,
damn, man.
And they
That's
caught
scary.
something. And I don't know how it all panned out, but
wow.
But
that's pretty amazing.
And that's when I first started to see, like, okay, one thing, training dogs. Your general stuff where we make our living, which is just basic obedience, basic, intermediate, advanced obedience, and problem behaviors for your average dog owner. That's one thing, and that was fun. I always loved all that problem solving. But the therapeutic side of things, the sort of medical implement type thing, that always fascinated me. And I had some really crazy experiences with one in particular with a client of my own. She was epileptic, like very badly. And she had just adopted this dog from a shelter, big, huge, like Great Pyrenees mix or something like that. And kind of a shy dog, but within a few months of being with her, he noticed he started alerting her that when she was going to have a seizure, he would know she was going to have a seizure before she did. And then he would basically headbutt her into a corner, and then and because the seizures were really bad in her legs, then she would learn, they worked this out together. She would learn to lie. She would sit down in the corner, and then he would lie on her legs while she was having her seizure.
Wow.
And it just blew my mind. And I'm just going to rant about this for a second, but what blew my mind about is everybody, when I tell that story, the first question everybody asks, well, how do you think the dog knew? And I'm saying there's a million ways the dog could have known. It's the least interesting part of the question to me, because at the time, it's just like 20 something years ago, the kind of dogma in the scientific communities around dogs and around animals and consciousness, which is something I've been interested in forever, is the dogs are like just meat machines. They don't have really consciousness, interiority, and inner life. They can't reason. They can't this. They can't, all the things you hear from the vets and the academics and all that stuff is dogs can't this, they can't that, they can't the other thing. And so when I looked at that situation, I said, well, wait a minute. They're not supposed to be able to do future planning because that requires a certain amount of cognitive architecture. And here's this dog. So he knows she's going to have a seizure. That could be scent based. That could be, that could be a whole number of things. That's at least, and he knows she struggles after this. She's having problems. These are the problems. I need to let her know. And then here's how I can help. This was untrained. This was all initiated by the dog. That's a level of future plan, analysis, future planning, coming up with a solution and acting it out. That is supposed to be way beyond the intelligence of something like a dog. And that's what always fascinated me about it. And I had always been like, of course, anybody who spends any time with a dog, with an animal, has any kind of connection or intimacy, they're going to see right away, there's a whole kind of inner life happening here that's not that different from my own. You know, I mean, there's a different neurological apparatus, physical apparatus, but in terms of feeling, there's like not that much difference, you know. And it's one of the things to this day, you know. I mean, it's changed. The world has changed now a little bit, but back in the late 20th, early 21st century, if you were an academic and you suggested that animals had an inner life, a rich, real inner life, like, you know, akin to what we do, your career was over. They'd throw you out of academia. And I know that one of my clients was a guy named Robert Sapolsky, who's one of the leading animal behavior experts in the world and neurobiologists over at Stanford. And his mentor was a guy named Donald Griffin, who in the 70s and 80s, when he was kind of nearing the end of his career, he was one of the leading ethologists, animal behavior guys at the time at Harvard. And he wrote a book called Animal Minds. But he had to wait till he was 70 to write a book about animal minds, because if he had written it suggesting that what I just said, you know, that they have this rich inner life with all these capacities, even as a Harvard professor at the peak of his career, would have been ostracized from academia. And you know,
how did this Stanford guy? What was it? Can you talk about, like, why did he hire you? What did he hire for?
Oh, the same reason anybody.
He's an animal behaviorist already.
Well, he studied baboons in the wild.
Okay.
All right. And he's quite famous, actually. He's written a book about why zebras have no ulcers. You know, it's mostly about stress. And
I read that one.
Yeah. It's got another one out, which I highly recommend, called Behave, which is about the neurobiology of human behavior. But you know, he hired me. They got a puppy, and they hired me to you know, the usual stuff, potty training, obedience training, this and that.
Right. That seems crazy. I mean, I end up with, like, you know, behavioral psychologists that you know, that want help with their dog, and sometimes they know what to do, but their spouse won't listen to them, so they just hire me to tell them the same shit.
To be clear, he's not a trainer, but I did ask him once about operant conditioning, and he said a very interesting thing about it, which is that operant conditioning is least relevant to behaviors most relevant to animals in the wild, and most relevant to behaviors least relevant to animals in the wild.
All right.
So, you know, he's talking about animals in the wild. That's a whole different story than a domestic animal that has to live in the human world. You know, we're talking about baboons out on the African savannah, you know.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, let me ask, before you get too deep into it, like, what did you do? How old were you when you got started? What did you do before? Like, what made you say, you know, this Kurt Turner, I'm gonna hook up with him. I want to be a dog trainer. I'm gonna
desperation, my friend, desperation. I went to university. I got a master's degree in economics and international relations. Did really well academically. Got out. My dad was a corporate vice president, so, you know, that was the kind of career track that was laid out for me. So I got started. My first 4 years of work were at the Port of Miami and the marketing department down there. And then I moved to California and was working in the shipping and transportation industry. And so I spent 8 years doing strategic planning and stuff like that. And I friggin' hated it. I just couldn't. And it wasn't the work that I hated. It was the environment. And you know, anybody who's listening, who's probably, you know, right now, who's got some office job with some, you know, underqualified middle manager riding them every day. You know, it's a horror show. And I just realized, like, it's like, I can't do 30 years of this just to get my little, there's not even a pension. I mean, there's nothing. It's like, what, you know, I got one life as far as I know. And I don't want to spend 30 years of it, the bulk of my days, just hating it. And, you know, like that. And I'm sure all of you have been there, you know, that whole looking forward to Friday, you know, what is that song? You know, everybody's working for the weekend. Yeah. And then Sunday night, you know, trying to prolong your Sunday night as long as possible, because you knew once you closed your eyes, you were going to open them again onto the hellish reality of Monday morning. You know?
Yeah.
And I just couldn't do it. In my college years, I was a creative guy. I had all kinds of creative aspirations, and I just quit. And and then I started. Well, I met a guy, a friend of mine, in a different context, and we decided to try to open an art gallery together, because he had some background in that. I said, I'll try anything. I just got to get out of this. I will try.
In San Francisco?
Yeah, in San Francisco. So I spent 4 years. I opened 2 art galleries, and Yeah, worked at it for pretty hard for 4 years, but after 2 burglaries, I kind of threw in the towel, and that's when my wife at the time, I was just like I was 30 or like early 30s, 31, 32 years old. I'm going like I got no money. I had to cash out my last little, whatever 401k I had set up to just get through, with this gallery thing. I got no money. It's the burglary thing. I just realized I wasn't cut out for sitting in a store, waiting for people, passively sitting there waiting and hoping people were going to come in and buy something.
Yeah.
And then having to be victimized by friggin' burglaries, and as I threw in the towel. And that's around the time I had met my wife at the time. I said, I was just so desperate. I said, I don't know what to do. And she goes, well, you're good with dogs, because I've always been a hobbyist. We had dogs when I was younger. I was good with them. I had a knack for them. She goes, well, you're good with dogs. Why don't you train dogs for a living?
Wow.
And I said,
random.
Yeah, well, because she saw that I was good with them, and then we had a couple of dogs, and it was, as with anybody, they were kind of an important part of our life. And I had to give them up to leave Florida to come to California.
Mm-hmm.
So she said that, and my response was, well, that's not a job, And to which she said, look into it. Why don't you look into it? So, and at the same time, actually, one day I was at the bookstore, and back when bookstores were still a thing, and
I got a few.
And I found this book called "Good Owners, Great Dogs" by a guy named Brian Kilcommons.
Yeah.
And I was flipping through the pages, and I was like, wait a minute, whoever this guy is, this must be his career, because he sat down and wrote a book about it and got on Oprah.
Right.
And that's when it kind of hit me. This is a career. Yeah. You just have to figure out how to do it. And then that's how one thing led to another. And then I poked around. I contacted dog trainers. Pretty much most of them just kind of hung up on me and just, lousy business. You don't want to be in it.
That's funny.
And then I rang Kirk back from the Yellow Pages. I just went through the Yellow Pages. That's what we had back in the day. And he actually chatted me up on the phone and said, well, look, I don't know, man. I don't know you. Why don't you come down and spend a day with me, and let's see how it goes.
Right.
And so that's one thing led to another from there. And then we became very good friends. And
here you are, 30 something.
Yeah, here I am, 30
and a half,
something like
two
that.
and an unpublished book later.
Yeah, three. I got three published books, one unpublished, and
all right.
And we're just waiting for the right timing and the stamina to do the rewrite.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's good. I mean, I like the book. I knew Brian when I first got into trying to actually grow my business, travel around, go to conferences and things like that. I met Brian a couple times, and his wife Sarah, something or another.
Good people.
Yeah, they're good people. Brian's a really good guy. Brian also was studied with Captain Haggerty, so it all comes full circle for the people that are that have been around it in the 30-year range like we have.
Well, he's a guy that I wished I could have shook his hand and thanked him for writing that book, because he really I remember we all have those moments in our life where you go, wow, something changed in my brain in that moment.
Yeah.
And made me start moving in a completely other direction. And his book did that for me. I bought that thing. I read it cover to cover.
That's amazing.
I said, I want to do this.
I'm looking him up right now, see if he's around. I don't know.
Yeah, I had a question too about the before we get too far away from it, about the Pyrenees that was alerting to the lady's seizures.
Mm-hmm.
Were you ever able to proof that and make it? Did they pursue service dog training or anything like that so that she could have the dog all the time? Or
no, she didn't need to, because the dog did everything she needed. And it just and she didn't have a lot of money, so service dogs, are expensive. And this was, I don't know what the status of service dog training was back 25 years ago when this thing happened.
That's true.
I don't think it was as widespread as it is today. But and I never followed up with her. We got, my main training with her was just the dog had a lot of anxiety issues, so it was difficult to take him into public places, which kind of inhibited his ability to help her. And it's one of the big disqualifiers for service dogs. If you can't go in a public place without shutting down,
of course,
you're not much use.
That intuition though there is something there. Like my dog is my service dog, and so he's really in tune to me. But found out the other day we had an incident. We were on my other dog is the Twisted Tea dog, and we were shooting a new commercial, and Emily, my wife, was the dog walker person in the TV commercial, and she gets pulled down, fucking bites it hard. Road rash. I mean, bruised up. Yeah, and Lemmy, my dog, he was in the commercial too, but my dog went to her when she was in distress. He did the same thing for her that he would have done for me if I needed it in that moment. And I mean, he was like, I had to pull him off of her. Like he was like, no, I have to protect mom now, you know?
Wow.
And we've never worked on that. Even she was amazed. Everybody was, actually. I mean, that knew that he was a service dog for me, and he did the same thing for her, just out of whatever going on in his little pecan head, you know?
It's like a Marine. When a Marine hears gunfire, they run towards it. It's what everybody else runs away.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. I've never seen anything like that, you know, for him to have that same urgent response to the person that he's not directly bonded to.
Yeah. And they know when it's a crisis, and they know it's amazing. I mean, there's endless books to be written about this particular subject, about the deep cognition and the nature of the canine mind, and not just neurologically, but just more on this type of stuff, that is, and for me, it just gets right big. And this is other things I've been interested in my whole life, just the nature of consciousness and what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be a sentient, aware, responsive creature, responding to its environment, and how amazing the fact that any of this exists is in the first place. And how much and how much we share with these higher, especially with the higher cognition, and especially with dogs. I mean, we share 99% of our DNA with chimps, but we own only 80 something with dogs. But the dogs are our best friends, not chimps. And
well, chimps want to argue with you.
Yeah,
and they can rip your face off.
Yeah, they rip your freaking face off, and
more than your face, from what I hear, man.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
They get frisky out there.
That's always been very interesting to me. Also, the whole coevolution of dogs and humans. I actually, in that book of mine, John, that you have the manuscript of, that second chapter I'm especially proud of, is about just the coevolution of dogs and humans and culture.
Oh yeah,
and that's
culture. Yeah, I mean, the culture,
the whole interrelationship. And
for sure.
I actually had thought about turning that chapter into a book on its own, because it's kind of not, it's relatively non-controversial.
Wow, shit, man. I mean, the thing is who reads dog training books? Just other dog trainers, man. That's and the only reason they're reading it is to rip you a fucking new one.
All right.
No, exactly. I get that with some of the reviews, some of my Amazon reviews on some of my books on Amazon. I just, like, you see this, this person didn't read it. They flipped through the pages to look for something
that they didn't
agree with.
Something
and then they went on to some long rant on their review about this guy doesn't know what he's doing, blah blah blah.
Exactly. I mean, that's one reason. If this were a podcast about dog training and how to train a dog and everything, the only people listening would be dog trainers, and they would be waiting to rip you a new one, man.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's part of the reason I'm ready to get out of this world. I love, I'll never stop loving dogs. I'll never stop working with dogs, training with dogs, and helping people here and there with things, because I'm really good at it, right? But the business of it and the being in that world has just been, and also to see the amount of misinformation that's put out under the guise of being humane is
academia too.
Academia sets itself up in this. And what I've found when I looked at all these studies is that they basically none of those studies would really pass muster as a real hardcore scientific double-blind study. They're all set up to find exactly what their proposition initially is, so
I mean, a lot of stuff is set up like that. It's just not dog behavior only, I mean, a lot of people that do the studies are doing the studies to, they want to prove a point, and they're going to
they want to prove a point, so they set the study up so it'll find the point
to prove the point. I hear you. So how okay, so when did you work for Kurt?
I never worked for him. I worked with him. We never exchanged money. We exchanged clients later when I started getting busy. We exchanged a lot of referrals.
Okay.
But that was anyway, that was why he was so generous.
So how did you get out? How did you get out and start, your own gig? Like
hustle. Go to every vet in town every 3 weeks with your brochures, chat up the receptionist who's the main point of contact. Right. Yeah. I when I got a book out, I made up little media packs and sent them to all the vets, addressed it by name to the veterinarian, with an introduction letter and my book and and then go visit again in all the pet shops, just schmoozing, and but primarily. Well, my first pile of referrals came from a woman named Gwen Bonenkamp, who owned a place called Perfect Paws out here in San Francisco, which is at the time. Gwen, they were like the premier sort of dog training group class place in the area. Yeah. And she was looking to off the business to somebody, and she kind of took me once I had trained with Kirk, she kind of became another mentor to me, and she was very good. And then she started, we had once she saw that I kind of knew what I was doing, she started sending me referrals because they no longer wanted to do private training, kind of like me now. I send my overflow private stuff to a colleague of mine who I trained, and he cuts me a commission. So that's how I got started. And so my main job always was just knock it out of the park for each and every client, because they're going to tell their friends. And if you can do that and you can sustain that long enough, word of mouth is going to start. Oh yeah, and that's what happened, and then years went by. I kept getting better, and then Yelp came out, and then I started getting, now I have the #1 rated dog training business in the Bay Area on Yelp and on Google from the reviews. That's awesome.
Nice.
So now I'm finally at the place where people come looking for me, And
30 years later, 35 years later,
and I don't have to go out and do that kind of hustle anymore. And,
right.
But that's for the first 15, 20 years. I mean, you all know it. If that's, it's you're nobody. And there's somebody else out there who's somebody by the time when you're still a nobody and you're trying to cut into that turf, Yeah,
for sure. So how did you, I know I was telling Shane, I mean, you have a pretty interesting client list. Who can you talk about? I mean, I know some of this stuff was on your website, but you had some clients, famous people that you helped out?
Because of being, this is one of the cool things about training in the Bay Area, especially San Francisco in particular, because there's so many interesting people who live here. Despite all the crap that you hear about San Francisco all over the country with the crime and this and that, it's actually a pretty interesting freaking place, and a lot of very interesting people live here. And so my first sort of celebrity client was a man, and I'm sure few people on this podcast have probably ever heard of him, but his name was Michael Tilson Thomas. Yeah, and he was the symphony conductor. He's considered one of the great classical musicians of our time. San Francisco Symphony had just hired him away from the London Symphony, and just by a fluke, it's from one of those referrals from Gwen. I ended up training with him, and we hit it off. We made a nice connection. I did a nice job on his dog. We liked each other. He liked me, and he was totally dialed into the whole celebrity network out here. So I got Barry Levinson, who's a famous movie director. He did Rain Man and a bunch of different things. Robin Williams, and made good friends with that family. And still,
how was that?
Awesome, dude. That was awesome. I remember standing in his front yard out there, and this was maybe I had been there a bunch of times at this point. Was out in the front yard training the dogs. They were all inside, and then there's a big old gate on the front, and I hear a knock, knock, knock on the gate, and then the gate opens, and this guy, kind of overweight, 60-something-year-old guy, comes walking in, and it looks a little like you with the beard there, and I'm like, I know that guy. That's David Crosby.
Oh, no way.
And it's like, holy cow, I don't know if I can use language on this podcast.
Yeah, you can say whatever the fuck you want.
That's what I said, holy shit. And so I'm like, hey, how you doing? And I'm there training the dog. He's like, hey, how you doing? He walks into the house, and I go back to doing my thing. About 10 minutes later, Robin, his wife Marcia, and he come walking out, and we're just standing in the front yard shooting the shit for like 20 minutes. And I was like, I'm standing here with
David Crosby and
Robin Williams in his front yard shooting the breeze about whatever. I don't even know. I kind of,
that is so crazy.
Wasn't leading the conversation, and I met a bunch of people like that, but I have to say, of all of the celebrities, there haven't been that many, but it's been it's a moderate handful of celebrity types that I've met. Robin Williams was hands down the coolest person.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones were a lot less cool. One
It's
in
like if you
particular,
could only get somebody like that to write a review. Oh,
I asked them when it was all over, and Marcia, his wife, who's very sweet, she just said, "Look, we would love to write you a review, but it's just a matter of policy. We don't use Robin's name like that."
Right.
Yeah,
And,
and we don't. We've had some famous clients too, and it's like, you don't want to ask because you don't want to be the grab on, like, oh, I need your name on my website.
Yeah, I know.
But if they do it organically, it's fantastic.
Yeah. No, I felt good enough to ask about it because I had known them. I trained 2 dogs at that point, I think, for them, and and they were, the vibe was always so sweet. They were always, it was always so. I get that. There was a couple of other places I went with high level celebrities where this was definitely not the case. I mean, here at his place, everybody welcoming, friendly, no better than you vibe at all, and it was just like that the whole time. So I felt comfortable asking, and then and Marsha was always very straight up. She said, "Well, we just don't do that for anybody." I said, "Hey, fair enough. I just thought you don't get if you don't ask sometimes,
True.
But they were just like, I mean, if you ask, San Francisco is a relatively small town, and a lot of people know a lot of people around here. Mm-hmm. And everything you ever hear about anybody who ever met Robin Williams, they all say the same thing that I just said. This is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Yeah. And some of the other, again, there was a particular actress whose name shall remain nameless, who I met at the same time, and she was just exactly the opposite. Just
oh wow,
awful, just a really awful person.
Was she she was a client of yours also?
Yeah, for a while, and and she's extremely well known. If I mentioned her name, everybody would know. Yeah. But she was so nasty that on my website, I'll put and has trained dogs for celebrities like Robin Williams, this one, that one, and the other one, and I had put her name on there, and it wasn't nothing, it was just a trained dog. About 2 years later, I get a nasty grant from her lawyer. You are using my client's name to enrich yourself at her expense. We will sue you if you don't immediately take her name off your website. I had her name in one little sentence. Wow. I trained so-and-so's dogs, which I did. I trained her dog, right? Yeah. And that's the difference. I mean, what an awful person she was.
And then what? That's kind of the ask forgiveness, not permission. I mean, I had that happen to me, not with a person, with the of all things, my graphic designer, my company in New Jersey used he used the New Jersey Turnpike logo and turned it into a dog training logo. And we used it for, 2-3 years. And one day I got a registered letter from the New Jersey Turnpike Authority from a lawyer and their email address in it is, you need to cease and desist. It's really kind of nasty, but not really. And I was like I got a hold of my graphic designer. I said, hey, I need a new logo. Within 20 minutes, I had a new logo up and blah, blah, blah. And I printed new shit. And I got a hold of the lawyer at the New Jersey Turnpike Authority, sent him my website, said it's done. Sorry about that, right? He sent me a letter. He sent me an email. He says, Jesus Christ, man, I never had anybody so agreeable. I'm like, yeah, who gives a fuck, man? It's not like I'm using their domain name, man. I mean, nobody really cares what my logo looks like, right? So, it sucks when that happens. So,
no, but it was, it was no big deal to me. I mean, it was, I was just like, wow, man, what a bitch, Jesus. I've always just had a difficult time. People who are that lucky in life to be famous and rich and talented, and that they have so little goodwill in their heart to be able to just, there's some guy who's just a local dog trainer there in San Francisco. Yeah, and he did a nice job for me. So where's the goodwill? If I would suspect that if I was rich and famous and somebody did a great job for me, it would be my pleasure to lend my name to to them, to help somebody out who's still trying to make it in their career, and just like my friend Kirk did. That guy, that was such a, he didn't need to help me. He was potentially creating a competitor. We had a gentleman's agreement. We shook hands. He said, you don't compete with me in the major forms of advertisement in my zones.
Yeah. All right.
I said,
all right.
Great.
Well, we never shit, man. We still compete. I'm still in Oakland. I got a different trainer than the one you dealt with, thank God, but I'm still out there in Oakland and haven't. Yeah, I know. Let's not even go there. But
that woman that we had a back and forth about.
Yeah, man. And
the one I met at the bar with you that day that never got back to me.
Yeah. And now I have another trainer out there who's good. She took over the same business that I took over from the trainer that I trained. I think I trained him when he was 61 years old, and he worked till he's 75 and retired. So he busted his ass for 14 years and retired. Wow. And I license his business now. But shit, man, we're still technically competitors. But I mean, there's plenty of business out there. There's
plenty of dogs out there
for good dog trainers, man. I don't consider good dog trainers competitors. I consider them colleagues.
Shane I wish that was more true. It's because I think one of the things Kirk told me ages ago, and it didn't make sense to me, that makes plenty of sense now, which is the only thing two dog trainers can agree on is what the third one is doing wrong. And I have found the dog training community out here, unless you're in a particular clique of a particular approach, they won't talk to you. I know. Everybody's pretty I mean, there's just not, so the only trainers I'm actually friends with are the people I train.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you.
I got you. That's funny. That's funny. I got a few of those, man. I use that in my when I used to do consultations myself. I would use that. I would say, you know what? There's a saying, the only thing two dog trainers agree on is what the third one's doing wrong. And I said, but that's actually, there's something else. If you ask, I don't care if you never use a training call or if you do everything all positive, you have this methodology, that methodology. I think the other thing that a dog trainer always agrees on is they will all say, if you're going to use this method, if you're going to do this, you have to be absolutely consistent, right? And even the trainers that are training in ways that you don't agree with, they do. I think most dog trainers would agree. Whatever approach you're going to take, you should be consistent. I mean, it consistently might not work, but you should be consistent. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I always love the client. So because you're right, and the client, when he says, so how, when you ask him about the consistency, well, I'm pretty consistent, and I'm always point right back out and say, well, that's an oxymoron.
Yes. In other words, you're inconsistent.
So either you're consistent or exactly. So either you're consistent or you're not.
Yeah.
So pretty consistent means no, which means that's probably where your residual problems are, coming from.
Well, and we weren't going to talk that much about dog behavior or anything, but I also tell people, I mean, if you're going to be inconsistent, you're better off not even trying anything. You're better off doing what you're doing, because if you start some shit and you don't follow through with it, that's going to drive your dog ape shit. It's going to make it worse. You're better off not training the dog than you would be to try to train the dog.
No, I know.
The other thing I love about a lot of clients is the reason you're there is because whatever they've been doing isn't working. Hello. And then when you get there and you say, well, here's what you need to do, they say, well, can't I just do it this way? And I'm like, dude, man, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting, right?
Or the one. How about this one? I read online that.
Oh yeah. ... Yeah.
I'm like, well, then why don't you go back to that website and just finish the training there?
Well, I sometimes would say there was a comedian that used to come out and he'd say, hello, my name is so and so. I'm a professional comedian, unlike the people you meet at work every day. and I would say, well, here's the deal. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do, and blah blah blah. And I am a professional dog trainer, unlike the people you meet at work every day.
Yeah.
We're going to tell you. Yeah.
Somebody at the park told me blah, 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 blah.
I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. So you go and, these people pay you 4 figures to help you train their dog. And then they go out to the park and the person says, that dude don't know what he's talking about. And, or I've had people come up to me. Well, you've had this happen at Baker Beach, man, where people come up to you and they're like, why are you doing it that way? Or why are you doing it this way? And I had a woman who I said, this dog is highly dog reactive, blah, blah, blah. And I held the leash out. I said, so why don't you show me what you would do? And then I get like, whoa, no, I'm just saying, blah, blah, blah.
Saying,
yeah, right. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you probably, I kind of lose my shit in those moments.
Yeah,
I just feel like it's so outrageous that it's like I'm just minding my own goddamn business out here training the dog. And it doesn't happen that much anymore because I don't do much private training anymore. But if I would go be working with some dog on, say, on a remote collar or something like that, somebody gets up in my face and I just get right up in their face back. I just don't have the patience for how fucking dare you. It's like, I just go straight to fuck off, man. Get out of my face, get out of my space, or you're gonna have to deal with me. I don't, And then they go, oh, well, you're so aggressive. I said, no, man, you violated my space. You're in here getting in my shit. This person's paying for my time. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and then they're like, difficult. Oh my God, and I'll say the same thing to a woman. And then they, women think they often, okay, I'm going to get in trouble here. But they often think they can say shit to guys in public contexts like that because we're not going to say anything back because it's a woman, right? So they got that cover. And
I don't say anything to anybody, man. I just keep my mouth shut and try to be diplomatic, man.
I'm not good at the diplomacy thing. I'm German.
Yeah, I like the here's the leash thing. It's kind of like they always say fighters, everybody like fighters, everybody's got to play until you get punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you the same thing. They got a problem like that, and you hand them the leash and go, okay, go.
I mean,
shuts them down every time.
Yeah, I freely admit. Sorry, go ahead.
The only other one I've used a few times, and I don't. That was in my more confrontational days as well. But I was never like you, Mike. But I like you. I have a good. We have good conversations, especially when we're drinking beer.
So, yeah, we do.
But somebody said, "Oh yeah, well I talked to so and so, and they said this, that, and the other." And I say, "Well, I'll tell you what, man. They could meet up with me, and I'll show them my tax return." And they can show me their tax return, and they can show me how much money did you make training dogs last year.
Right.
Yeah, that's the whole part of this business. I'm just tired of it. It's 32 years.
But it's everything. But I mean, it is. It gets to be the time to move on, right?
No, and I'm still creative. I just turned 65, so I just want to. Creatively, I want to do something else. What I really enjoy right now is mentoring other trainers, young people, especially young people who, bright young people who, for whatever reason, they decide they're not doing college. And, those of us who are a little older is like, okay, if you don't have a college degree, you're going to, unless you want to go work some shit job someplace, you're going to have to get creative and do something
and work for yourself.
And here's a career.
I don't know one single person that ever went to college that does what they went to college for.
Including me.
Yeah, including me.
I mean, even my wife too. My wife, she went to college. Doesn't do anything related to what she spent all that time and money and effort doing, learning.
We grew up in a different time. My dad made a decent salary as a vice president. I mean, corporate salaries weren't then what they are today, but he made a decent, he was able to, I went to state school. I think a college education is a really valuable thing, not because necessarily you're going to do that particular thing for the rest of your life, but it was such a formative time for me in terms of developing social relationships and just all the whole party crazy, just cut loose, discover yourself, and also learn stuff. I learned so much by all those classes I took to make you a more cultured human being.
I'll give college that prop too, man. I mean, I was nowhere ready to go to college when I left high school. I started college when I was 27 years old. I was the old dude in class, man. And then when I started going to Cal, it was night school. Then I was more like, there were people actually.
There's a different crop of people.
But I learned a lot. I mean, I learned a lot about economics. I learned a lot about politics. I learned a lot about philosophy. Critical thinking. A lot of things.
That's the part. I just don't think there's no context in life where being more well educated is going to work against you. It's always
that's true. Yeah.
And I see the deficit in some of my employees. When they're smart people, so it's not about smart. Because college is mostly it's information more than if you're smart, you're smart.
Yeah.
So they're smart people, but the amount of stuff they don't know, even when it comes to, I don't know, talking about the war in Ukraine or something like that. The amount of stuff that these people don't know is just kind of shocking to me.
Yeah.
And that's so I think.
Well, it's even about their dogs.
Yeah.
Like you can shoot a rocket in space, but you can't make your dog sit.
But
I always tell them, I say that I tell my trainers all the time, I say we're working with intelligent people. They're just dog dumb.
Yeah. They're just dog dumb. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But also college back then didn't cost $100,000 a year.
No.
Or whatever. My dad was able to put me and my sister through school, not go into debt. We were really lucky that when it was a state school, I went to Florida State. and in-state tuition, all of that. Transferred from a junior college, went up there, all that stuff. But I loved my college education. It really set me going. And then of course I didn't end up doing any. I didn't have the big corporate career that my dad always wanted me to have. With my master's degree. But I had a master's degree that opened doors. I had a master's degree that opened doors.
Well, I got a couple of questions about that, but Shane has to read a thing, man. You got your thing?
Oh yeah.
We got one sponsor. We're gonna send you some shit from our sponsor. So here it comes.
Let me find my read here. Hang on.
All right. Well, look for it. Let me ask Micah. Okay, you got it.
Well, then maybe we can talk about service dog training after that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Shane does it. We're getting ready to roll it out.
All right. So our sponsor of the podcast is Kakalaki. And Kakalaki is hailed as the local brand with a national following and now celebrating more than 2 decades in business. North Carolina-based Kakalaki brand is the iconic Southern lifestyle brand that specializes in Kakalaki-branded sauces, snack nuts, beverages, food service, and menu items, apparel, outdoor sporting goods, sponsored events, and more. The company also makes and distributes Kakalaki Cheerwine sweet sauce, as well as the Carolina Tar Heels barbecue sauce, which is an officially licensed collegiate product. Kakalaki is a family-owned business in Pittsburgh, North Carolina. And if you go to kakalaki.com and buy yourself a big old pile of stuff, put in ButFixer15 at the checkout promo code, and you will get 15% off of your order. And I got to say, aside from the part that we read, I actually use this stuff all the time. Look at my social media, look at my Facebook page, look at my cooking page. I just did I made jalapeno popper stuffed chicken thighs the other day and hit them with the cack, and boy, that shit's good. So,
and the Cheerwine sauce.
All right, so just to fully help your the listeners out, how do you spell that?
Cakallacky.
Kakalaki.
It's like it sounds. Kakalaki. Yeah. We had Paige, the founder, on a couple episodes ago, man. And he started this. He started it while he's in college on his kitchen table making hot sauce. And he did the same thing you did, Mike. Went into the corporate world and was like, it ain't for me. Now
that's
he's
some poisonous stuff, man.
Yeah. Now he's got a big warehouse and getting bigger every day. So
that's what I love about America, man, is that I'm an immigrant, right? So I don't think in Germany, where I grew up, I would have been able to have this kind of just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, think of something and do it a career.
It is a good country. It's a lot easier to start a business here than it is other places. I mean,
any place, even in the more developed world, like in Germany, places like that.
We're trying, and we're trying in Holland, and we're trying in Portugal. Portugal is wow. I mean, it's difficult.
No, it's just layers of bureaucracy, and then in Germany, you have to go through their network of schools, and there's always in Germany, there's always a system in place for everything.
Oh, yeah.
And if you want to be a dog trainer, like here, you can just hang out a shingle, and the results are going to determine whether you end up in a business or not, right?
Right.
There, you're not even allowed to do that. You got to get your certificates through the thing and go through the whole structure of established dog trainers before they certify you, and then you can go do it.
And I mean, they would like to do that here, and I just never. They have been saying, Mike, you know this as well as I do, that they have been saying we're going to develop a certification, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it has never happened.
Well, I think it's a horrible idea anyway because of the amount of controversy around different approaches.
Yeah.
Because you can't, the only things 2 dog trainers can agree on is what the third one is doing wrong. It's impossible.
And the inmates run the asylum, man. The inmates are running the asylum, man. I mean, hey, man, I think I'm going to certify my competitor. Or whatever. I mean, a lot of people just can't handle. You're my competitor.
For a lot of the stuff, I don't think it's necessary in the sense, because eventually, if you suck and you don't get results,
then you're out of business.
Nobody's going to hire you.
Exactly.
And that's the market will take care of it. The market will take care of it. They will, starve out the people who suck.
I 100% agree with that, man.
So this is, anyway.
Well, so tell me, so your dad's like, okay, go to college, get a master's degree. You get a master's degree. You're working in the corporate world. Your wife says, fuck that shit. You should be a dog trainer. I mean, how did they take that?
Not well.
Not well. There's the buts, right?
Yeah, no, not well.
But, yeah.
Yeah, there's a big but.
That's a big but.
But here's the funny thing. So, I always was, my dad always thought I was like the disappointing kid who never was able to kind of make it. I think he wanted me to live the life that he didn't have because he had kids when he was 20.
Mm-hmm.
And, he wanted to live vicarious. He wanted me to be the playboy corporate hotshot, jet setting all over the planet, blah, 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 plenty of, girlfriends everywhere and all that stuff. And never really actually bothered finding out what I actually wanted. But, he passed away a couple of years ago. But in the last couple of years, when he saw the money, when I bought a house out here for, $700,000, and he just thought for his mind was, oh my God, are you sure you can afford that? And I was telling him the amount of money I was making every month off the different things between my books and the board and train business and the service dog training and my private training and classes. And I started telling him the numbers, and he was just like, oh, whoa, I had no idea.
And if you want to make more, you don't have to ask for a raise. You just go out and hustle.
You just go make more.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's kind of funny, man. I had my aunt was here, I don't know, a couple of months ago, and I mean she's been around. I mean we're not close, but we're in contact all the time. She knows what I do for a living. She'd seen me build the business, yada yada yada, because her and my mom worked together, and out of all the success we've had and all the things we've done, she still asked me. Even 15 years into the business, she goes, okay, so what do you really do? I was like, it's like, I own this fucking business. I mean, what do you mean? She thought I had to have a still quote
job.
Well,
but that's like
it was unfathomable that I could have made a living over 15 years.
Yeah, as a dog
training. It's like, it's the perspective. It's so hilarious. I laughed. I was like, I didn't know whether to be butthurt or laugh or what, but I just had a good laugh. I was like, you got to be shitting me. I called my mom and I was like, you know what Claire just asked me?
What do you do anyway? Even my dad asked me that. My dad supposedly knew what I did. I mean, but my dad was self-centered as shit. So if it wasn't about him, he wasn't interested. And then finally, he was like, what are you doing now? Like, what? I said, I've still got a dog training business, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, right, around the time when he died, same thing, Mike. It was a matter of dollars and cents. Well, here's what I'm making, and this is what I did, and this is it. And then he's running around the assisted living,
bragging to all his friends, right?
Telling everybody how much.
You know how I found this out? Because he would have never told, we can get into a therapy session about our daddy issues now, but I only fucking found out that he actually had that thought because after he passed away, one of his drinking buddies told me, your dad told me how much you make. Whoa.
My dad.
He would have never said that to me.
Yeah,
my dad. When my dad would brag about my success, it was always followed by, "But what do you expect? He's my kid."
Right.
Somehow
They gotta
they gotta take some credit for that.
Stolen valor.
Stolen
valor.
Yeah.
Oh
exactly.
man, that one. That's deep right there, man.
Yeah, man. Always. It was always. Well, talk about my son. Well, of course, he's my grandson. My kid's a lawyer now in Texas. My oldest kid, and when he graduated from UT, my dad would say, "Yeah, well, what do you expect? He's my grandkid." Yeah, but whatever, man. So tell me,
go ahead.
You're into like how much service dog training are you doing, and what are you training them to do?
Here's the thing. So this is an interesting story. You were in the military, right?
Yeah,
John, you were a military dog trainer. What about you, Shane? You ever do military?
No.
Yeah,
I've got an authority problem. That's why I'm self-employed.
Ditto that. But so here's the story is this. So I I was married for 30 years, got divorced, and so awful experience and all that. And then I reconnected with a college sweetheart who we hadn't talked in 30 years, 32 years or something. We hadn't connected. We had a kind of hot thing in graduate school. And then, we just went our different directions. She went off, got married. I went off, got married. She became a journalist. And it turns out she became a war correspondent. And, it's a whole interesting story in itself. She's Indian, right? So she's, her parents are from India, and she lived between both countries, and she became it's a whole interesting story how she got started anyway. But she was living in Tallahassee, Florida. She was working at a paper down there, and then she went and got a job at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in Atlanta, which was the big paper then back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And she was basically the only brown female in a newsroom of 300 or 800 people, I think.
Wow.
And so, she had covered pretty big stories in Florida. She covered 6 executions at Florida's death row.
Wow.
Broke a huge rape story on Florida State that became a big national story. So she had, already cut her teeth. I mean, she interviewed these 6 guys who were, and then witnessed their execution the next morning in Florida's electric chair. So this is like as a 20-year-old.
They executed 6 people in one shot?
No. This was like over the course of a few years.
Oh, okay.
So in my mind, it was like, all right, everybody hold hands.
No. It was, over the course of a few years, and then she just saw so anyway, she had cut her teeth on some pretty gruesome shit.
Right.
And got to the AJC there, and they basically, she's Indian. Let's have her write stories about the new Indian restaurant that opened up on Peachtree Street, or how come Indian women have dots on their heads? How come write us something about sari fashions? Write us, all this kind of just ethnic crap. And she's like, okay, I get it. Start at the bottom, right? Work your way up. But they just kept pigeonholing her to the Indian girl that would do the Indian stories and never give her anything serious. So when the Iraq War broke out, and they needed volunteers to embed with the military, she was literally the first one that raised her hand and said, I'm out of here. Sign me up. I'm gone. I want to go. And so that really started her career. She ended up in Iraq. She did, I believe, something like 12 or 13 combat tours. I met a guy.
Wow.
Yeah. He became a friend of mine. He was I think he was an Army Ranger in Afghanistan. And he did 2 tours, and he was a QRF commander. You know what a QRF commander is? Quick Response Force.
Yeah.
So he's got the 20 square mile grid, and that's his responsibility. And any American guys are pinned down somewhere in some shit, him and his buddies are on the chopper in like 60 seconds, armed to the teeth, ready to go, right? And he said, I think, and we talked a lot about the shit that he went through there. And he goes, yeah, I definitely took lives, and my men took lives. It was war. And he goes, I think she saw more action than I did. Because he found out about it. She did 13 tours, and
that's wild.
She took a bullet fragment to the head, basically, where her Kevlar helmet was basically busted up. It saved her. She was caught up in 2 IED explosions where she was in a Bradley and got blown to pieces. And well, she survived because she was in the Bradley, and the Bradleys can take a hit like that. But major concussions, right? And then of course you're inside the smoking vehicle, and of course you're afraid to get out because the snipers are waiting, right?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So then she has shrapnel wounds in her leg from RPGs. Serious shit. So she was over there. And she got all the really, really horrendous combat related PTSD, and she wrote a lot about that, about the combat related PTSD.
So I was getting ready to ask you, like, is she okay?
No, none of those people are okay.
I can't imagine.
No, they're not okay. And and she wrote stories about, and I don't know where a lot of the guys were all from the South, because she was in Atlanta, so it's Georgia National Guard. That she was over there with, although she did do some embedments with the Marines also. And she also embedded with Kurdish fighters to fight in the fight against ISIS. That was her last embedment. And,
wow.
But she would follow some of these soldiers, and they just could not. They'd come home, and there were these nice, sweet guys when they went out. And John, you probably know this. You were in the military. The nice, sweet young guys when they went out, and when they came back,
fucking basket cases, man.
Cases. And one guy's, then he ended up in jail for attempted murder. They just you can't reintegrate.
Yeah.
There's, and this is going to get a little political here, but it's like when these guys come back, The same people who told you to go over there and be all you can be, nowhere to be found. They don't give a shit about you when you get back from over there. They just want you to be as little trouble as possible and spend as little money as possible on these veterans, these young guys who went out there and, put their life on the line for whatever dumbass political decisions are made in Washington. These guys get to go out and bleed for it, right?
Yeah.
And then they come back and they got nothing. And it was the same thing for her, when she was, she worked at the AJC for a long time, and then she went over to CNN, and which is also in Atlanta, and she'd get back from these combat deployments, and there was just no care taken for the mental health. I think it's at one point somebody gave her a card for a therapist and said, go talk to this person. She said she went in twice, and it was so obvious that this woman was completely out of her depth to deal to deal with the kind of trauma. I think she told me the story. She went in and the woman said something to the effect of, so what's troubling you? She's like, okay,
how much time you got?
How much time you got? But she said, let me just try one little thing. She goes, I can't get the image of heads on spikes at the sports stadium in Ramadi out of my brain. I close my eyes, they're looking at me. I open my eyes, they're still looking at me. What do I do?
What?
Yeah. This is a woman who lost 8 friends in 1 week. On a Monday, they went out, they had breakfast, they went out on combat patrol, and 4 of her friends were in the lead in the Humvee. I don't know why they put a Humvee in the lead of these things, but the Humvee rolled over an IED and blew the thing to pieces, and these guys burned to death right in front of her. 18, 19-year-old kids from Georgia National Guard. Yeah. 5 days later, they're doing, this was during the insurgency and all this stuff. They're just the worst part of the Iraq War. There's all these wrecked houses, and you got to go through them, and they're all booby-trapped. And 4 of her friends walked into a booby-trapped house, and it blew up and blew them to pieces. Ooh. And get this, she spent the rest of the day with her other friends out there picking up the body parts of her friends, trying to figure out who was who. Hey, man, I found a foot over here in a boot. Any idea who this was?
What?
Yeah. Crazy shit like that. How do these fucking people come back from this stuff, and then they're expected to just reintegrate into society?
You can't.
Where if you say a mean word to somebody, that's an assault.
It is crazy that the resources aren't there. I mean, on the dog side of things, man, we work with this outfit called Paws of Honor, and it's for military and police dogs that are retired, but they cut their benefits. When they're in service, they're a soldier, they're a policeman, they're a officer, right. And when the dog's time is done, they're the responsibility of the handler. And the handler is not always, these guys are retiring from being a police officer and stuff. They're not rolling in it, and they've got to take care of all the vet bills of an old, aging, and worked dog. Food, vet care, yada yada yada, and zero from the government they get.
Well, that's basically what the vets get. They get, you got your GI Bill. They get to go to college for free, this and that. But in terms of the real care that these guys need, for the most part, it's not there, and nobody gives a shit. And that's why guys like Jon Stewart, as much as he's trashed on the right for being a liberal, blah blah, he's the one that went to frickin' Washington for this whole thing with the burn pits. Remember this?
And the burn pits.
Yeah, he went to these. It's just like sort of like Agent Orange from Vietnam. The government did this stuff. All the old tires, vehicles, garbage, bodies, this, that, everything. They just throw it in a burn pit.
A lot of shit.
Put jet fuel on it and just light it up. And then these guys are getting cancer, and the plume of smoke goes right over the base.
Yeah,
which is like a mile away or half a mile away, right? These guys are getting, all these awful chronic diseases, and the government said, "Well, there's no scientific proof that this toxic cloud of shit that we had hanging over your head for weeks did anything to you." So that's my issue. But I mean, how this connects to dogs for me is when we first got together, she was having these atrocious nightmares every night. Wake up bloody, screaming in the middle of the night. God. And it was always the same thing. Oh my God, don't do it. Don't do it. Oh my God, don't do it. And then, she told me the story that went with that, which we probably don't have time for. But, so I just, I got her a little dog, a little 6-pound Chihuahua mix. And, well, actually, she came out to San Francisco, and I knew a guy out here who did MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. for traumatized people, and which is all illegal and underground. So we went to see him, and she had a session with him that I was there for, and then my little dog was on her chest the whole time for that 6-hour session, when she was just crying and just letting go for the first time of the shit that she saw.
Man.
Yeah, 6-8 hours, something like that. Just crying and just, all the stuff, the death, the destruction, the loss, the inability to talk to anybody about it. And she was holding my little dog the whole time. And he just, just like you were talking earlier about somehow dogs just know. Usually he's a squirrely, antsy little dude. He's a little terrier. And he just laid there. He just laid there and let her hold him. And then I sent him home with her to Atlanta. I said, you take him. Wow. I'll be out in a month. You take him, just hang out with him. And then I went out there and we went dog hunting, and her friend works for a rescue. We found this little dog, and he didn't need too much training, but just when I saw the impact that that dog had on her psyche, between the MDMA treatment, between one session of MDMA treatment and that little dog, the nightmares disappear. She has a couple of nightmares a year now, and they're like 20% of the intensity of what it used to be.
Every night.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And that's when I said, oh my God. So that's when I got interested particularly in training dogs to be service dogs for combat vets with PTSD. That was my main interest. Is that's I got a little skill set that I can do something to thank them for their service. By the way, one of the things I learned from her is don't ever go to a veteran and tell them thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Really?
I fucking hate it.
Really? It's nails on a chalkboard for me too. It's kind of like when somebody says, "Have a nice day," or "How are you doing?"
Really?
Yeah. Thanks for your service.
It's worse because if the guy really saw ugly combat, you're scratching on the ugliest part of the life that they ever experienced.
Oh, I feel like a huge dick. I go out of my way. Like if I see somebody in camouflage across the fucking room, I'll get up, go over there, and specifically on purpose tell that person. Well, I always have the same line. I say, "Look, I didn't have the balls to do it. I love what I do, and it's because you did what you did. Yeah, and thank you for your service." I feel terrible.
So now ask them, what are you supposed to say? If you want to express something, just ask them where they were. Ask them what they did. Ask them where they're deployed. Ask them how long they were out there. Ask them anything about what they actually did, except some fucking bumper sticker platitude that means nothing. That basically the vibe that comes off is you didn't have to do shit except come up with a platitude, and you have no idea what wreckage this has wreaked in my life. And but I'm supposed to allow. Now I got to be the one that makes you feel good by saying thank you, so you can feel good about yourself. But
that makes sense.
As opposed
to I've never heard it that way.
Yeah, no, that's the other guy, the Army Ranger guy. I was the same thing. He's like, this guy, he had it bad over there. He's got all kinds of injuries, lost a lot of friends, and thank you for your service. It's just it's almost it's not insulting, but it's close.
It's like I've always found it kind of gratuitous. I usually just say thank you, or every now and then I say
when I do it, I genuinely mean it. Like I know. How do you say thank you otherwise? Like I don't have 30 minutes to ask them where they went, what they
did. Find a different. Don't use that phrase.
I'm deleted from the damn bank, brain bank here.
But I found that when I see people like I don't know if I'm on a plane or something, or somebody just looks like a military type with the haircut or something, I'll just ask them. It's like, and most of these guys that I've met. I mean, they're happy to talk about it a little bit if there's some, because most people don't want to hear, I can't get the image of heads on spikes out of my brain. I can't get the image of my 4 friends burning to death out of my heart,
Right.
And so I thought, well, here's something I got with my little crazy skill set dogs, where I could actually thank them for their service, with an actual something, right?
True
that would actually fucking help these people when their government has basically tossed them by the wayside to rot away, And
what are the service dog laws in California like?
There's a lot of protections, so if you've got the problem, of course, with that category, and I'm sure if you're pushing into it yourself, you're going to find out, is the amount of scams that are out there.
Oh God, yeah.
And we had to be very clear in the very beginning. I was really straight with my team. It's like, I will not rubber stamp a service dog for airplane travel.
Nope.
I won't do it. Won't go near it.
Nope.
I don't want. Just no. So that's the first sort of thing that we weed through people is like, you need to have an authentic need, and you need to show me some kind of a doctor's letter or something that would suggest that a dog would be like basically a medical implement for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but it also is not it's not like, hey, here's your service dog, have a good time. I mean, they gotta participate in their training and everything, man.
We do in North Carolina. It's the dog's got to do a minimum of 2 functions that aid the person in their life. Yeah, then misrepresentation. It's not required by law for somebody to obtain professional training to make their dog a service dog, but the second line of that law states that misrepresentation of a service animal is a felony.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't have to get training, but if you fuck it up yourself, we can really. But in 15 years, I've never seen anybody ever press it all the way.
Nobody ever does, because that's like an unenforced. Nobody's ever going to enforce that law, and it's an issue.
Well, you
see somebody with a prong collar and an e-collar and dragging the lady down the aisle at the grocery store with a service dog vest on. We all know what the fuck's up there.
No, exactly. But so there's a funny story with that, because I actually don't, I haven't personally trained that many service dogs. I kind of have, but I ended up hiring this woman. This is a kind of a funny story. This is like just one of the things that can happen when you're in this so long. Years ago, I had a couple in my class with a little kid. She was like 12 years old, and I saw right away she's really good with the dog. So by like the 3rd class in the series, I started having that kid help the other clumsy adults, because I just got tired of dealing with the morons. And I sent her over to help them. She did, and they would hear stuff from her because she's a kid. They would be more entertain her. Well, anyway, P.S. 10 years later, I'm putting out an ad for a trainer. I was looking for a trainer, and this same woman applies. And she's now 22. And so I found out later that little move that I made had such a big impact on her that she completely pursued it. She became like some AKC junior trainer. And then by the time she was 15, 16, was the local neighborhood dog trainer for all the other people. And by the time she was 18, had built her own little business. And then she saw my ad come up, and she applied. And then she was in college at the time because she's pursuing a degree in psychology and counseling. And so I said, well, I really want to do the service dog thing. This sounds like it could align because I'm always, with my people that I hire, I'm always looking to align our business goals with their personal goals, so that they feel like they have a career and not just a job where they slot into somebody else's function only, And she said, well, I want to get my PhD, and I want to then have service dog training as part of my counseling and all this stuff. I said, well, let's do that together, And so that's what we've done. So I hired her, and she really is the one that developed that whole program. And in terms of the nuts and bolts, and I learned a ton from her.
Wow. She got her PhD?
She just got admitted to the PhD program. Yeah. So she's working on it now. So she's had to step back from us because now she's like doing, professional internships for that. But she's still sort of doing a consulting function for us, and I promoted another person up to her role as manager, so she's still working with me, especially on intakes and stuff like that. When you really need somebody with a clinical background to talk to the person about what is your need, and also to really like when you ask the legal questions, she understands the legalities of all these things way better than I do. I'm just more creating an umbrella for the business to happen so that she could, that she could flower in it, which she has. Yep. And then that branched into other areas of service dog training, everything from migraine detection, migraine alert, smoke detection, hearing assistance, all the little things. You just, we just like, people will call us and say, can you do this? And I say, well, we haven't done it, but answer is yes. We'll figure it out.
The only ones I don't touch anything scent related, like diabetes and seizures.
She's really good, man.
I just haven't been able to recreate, because that's all pheromone based, and it's like I can't recreate their pheromones in a lab somewhere because your pheromones ain't gonna smell like my pheromones.
Well, on the migraine thing, watching her do the migraine thing was really interesting, because I said, well, how does the dog? Because this dog, because with people who have real migraines, if you can get to your meds in time, and take them, the whole thing is it's dramatically mitigated. But if you just get hit with your migraine and then you take your meds, that whole process is already in the works, and you're just down for the count for a few days. And apparently the scent of the saliva changes when there's behind the scenes, your body is brewing a migraine attack. It changes the scent in your saliva. So you train the dog
Mm-hmm.
It's very complicated because you need to get saliva samples at different stages of the oncoming.
That's why I don't mess with it.
Cotton swabs and little test tubes and stuff like that. And so she's really good at that. And that was news. I mean, I've never done that. You know,
how long is that? How long? Let's just take the migraine dog. How long is that process?
I think about 6 months.
6 months, and that's prior. I mean, they're coming to you with a green dog on top of everything else, right?
Yeah. So then you got to do the obedience training because a dog that's not obedience trained is useless as a service dog,
right?
And then you got to do the initial scent distinction, which is complicated. Then you got to start bringing the owner, and then you got to start teaching the dog not to pick up the scent from the cotton swabs and the test tubes, but the scent of the owner's mouth.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, really complicated stuff. And I think we've graduated 2 now. And, you know, these people, if you talk to them, the dog saves their life. They just start nudging at them, and then they go and they take their meds. And one woman was able to get 24 hours notice. Now, I don't exactly know how they know all this stuff, that there was going to be a migraine, but but it's pretty crazy. And I think she's done some stuff with diabetic now, and she's starting to go into blood pressure.
Wow.
She just messaged me about a dog that I don't know if this dog spontaneously started alerting the owner when their blood pressure was spiking. But, you know, it's just kind of open-ended. You just discover these things by doing them, you know, what the capacity these dogs have, and a skillful trainer, you know. So that's how it connects. This all connects to the combat thing for me, because it started out for me with a passion to do something about these veterans, man, because I feel, you know, I can feel one way about our politicians and this fucking idiotic decisions they make. I kind of feel like if you're going to send our people to war, the politicians' kids should lead the charge.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that way too, actually. So,
you know,
never happens.
I mean,
it never happens.
No, of course it never happens. They get their college deferments and their this and their that, and then whatever somehow, you know, because we don't have a draft anymore. So this is
I mean, a lot of people. I joined the military at 18. I didn't have anywhere else to go. You know, those people have somewhere to go.
That was this other guy that I trained. His he was Native American. He grew up on an Indian reservation, and he was just like this, you know, and he was already being sexually abused there by one of his relatives just for rent, basically. And he said, fuck it. And he was always a tough, macho kind of athletic guy. And the military was a way out for him. He goes, I loved my time in the military. I loved my time in Afghanistan, except for all this, you know, he broke his neck in a parachute accident.
Oof.
Yeah. And,
I think just about all the service dogs we do are all psychiatric in some form or fashion, whether it's not always military, but it's definitely psychiatric based.
Psychiatric service dogs, in a way, I mean, because you're doing deep pressure therapy, right?
Yeah,
that's the easiest thing to teach. I mean, that's you know, and it's and I thought we'd be doing mostly that sort of stuff, you know, and but then it just morphed into this other stuff. And I mean, I think it's just cool that I'm learning a lot from this young person.
Right.
I brought on, way back who's now educating herself, and I'm learning from her, because in the dog training is such a huge field. There's no possible way you can know everything.
No way.
No,
no. You know, I can
start believing your own hype. You either go under or you get bit.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, I would tell people, you know, back when I was growing this particular business. I mean, you know, do you do this? Do you do that? And I say, if you took all the knowledge of dog training and it filled this room, what I know fills a cup. But I know what's in that cup is like what most people are looking for.
Most people need a little thimble from that cup.
I deal with their dog, man, to chill the fuck out and be my companion, man. I got a dog to chill, not a dog that is like, I'm afraid to leave the house because there might be a dog out there that he's going to go after, or people can't come over to my house because he's a fucking douchebag, right? Excuse my language. And, but yeah, I mean, that's a little bit, but that little bit is enough, you know? So I would say I'm an expert at that small, tiny bit. And then all the other stuff, I'm open to learning. And we brought in a woman because, just like you, Mike, I mean, we all boomed like crazy during COVID, all the dogs and everything. And then all the businesses boomed, and then it started to slow down. And now I still have attrition. I have people leave. They decide, okay, I'm done being a dog trainer. I want to do something else. I rarely have to train a dog trainer from scratch anymore, because I just put an ad out on Indeed. And I mean, I'm getting all these trainers that have been laid off, that their business didn't quite work out or whatever. So we ended up with a trainer who did a ton of service dog training, and she just wasn't happy with what she was doing. And we brought her in, and she's going to we're gonna start slow and start a program up PTSD, just like you said, and psychological therapy dog, and we're doing that in Kansas City in a couple of weeks. The trainers that want to participate, we're all meeting up in Kansas City. Shane is coming, we're going to put a starter program together and see how it works out. So
I think there's a lot there. I think there's a whole. That's why I'm putting so much energy. I've had some personnel issues for sure. I actually almost let this person go several times over certain issues, and then decided not to because to preserve because I knew I was at my stage in my career. I'm not going to go in and learn.
You guys are going.
What happened?
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Butt Fixer Podcast. Stay tuned for more guests, more stories, and more butt fixes. Make sure you click, like, subscribe, and follow at all of the places where you stream podcasts.